the implications for the ref, but most of the talk will be more general than that. So if you're not from the UK, most of the talk is still relevant for you. Okay, so the first question, I guess, is will REF 2029 be an AI exercise? And I think the answer is no, because the recent survey of academics, UK academics, found that we don't want it. We don't want AI to assess us yet. So most UK academics don't want full evaluation by AI, but they are open to using the AI to support the process. So maybe the selection of outputs or other aspects of the process. And they mostly expect AI to have a bigger role in the future and even take over in the longer term. So this time we won't be assessed by AI, almost certainly, but next time maybe. So for REF 2029, probably no formal assessment role, but institutions will use it, and some institutions are already using AI on an ad hoc basis to support the quality assessments of their submissions, and maybe also to find reviewers for internal outputs. So a few people will be using it already. A few people are using it already, as reported by the survey, and more will use it in the run up to REF 2029, I'm sure. And there might be a parallel REF that takes place with AI for REF 2029, just to assess the extent to which it works and gives similar results to the human exercise. So the advantage of AI obviously would be that it would be much cheaper and quicker than the current process. Okay, so in this talk, I'm going to discuss scoring academic documents for the REF, mainly for the REF preparation. And I'll talk about research that shows that large language models can be used to some extent to score the quality of journal articles, conference papers, impact case studies, and environment statements. And I see that the large language models currently like citation-based data, so you wouldn't want to stake your reputation on using them, but they still can be useful. So they're support for expert judgment and not a replacement for expert judgment at the moment. So I'm going to review the evidence, but first I'm just going to talk about the general issues in terms of comparing AI assessment and human assessment. So the current situation in general for AI in the research assessment system, not just the REF, but other types of research assessment. So AI is already used in the publishing system routinely to select reviewers. So if you're an editor or on an editorial board, you will have almost certainly used AI to help you select reviewers. The AI will have recommended people that it thinks are suitable reviewers. So it's already used, and it's already used to check for plagiarism in submission. So in the publication process, some types of AI are already standard. And some conferences and some journals, so a small minority, less than 1% probably, are using large language models to make suggestions for the content of reviews to reviewers. So most journals take the opposite approach and instruct reviewers not to use large language models and not to upload a submission to their journal or conference to AI. But some do provide comments to the reviewers. So the publisher or the conference generates the comments themselves with a large language model, then they give them to reviewers in order to help the reviewers do their job. So it's currently a minority position, but I think it will increase in the future. But obviously, especially if this proves to be a successful approach and the large language models get better. And also, as an author of a paper, you can now go to a website, put your paper in and ask for an AI review of that paper. And then you can look at the comments and decide whether you'll find them useful or not, and whether they would improve your paper or not. And in addition, there's last time I checked, one funder that's using AI to evaluate the submissions, and so if you submit a grant proposal to this one funder and you give them permission, they will assess your submission with AI, and if it gets a low score, and if the low score is ratified by a couple of human experts, then it will get a desk reject from the funder. So they're not using it for the final decision, but they're using it with human support for an initial desk reject decision, which cuts down on the total volume of review. So that's likely to increase in the future. So I think that might become a more widespread use case, the use of AI for desk rejection for grant reviews. And my personal guess is that there'll be much more use of AI to assess the quality of published academic research in the future for ref type exercises. So in terms of comparing AI reviews, large language model reviews, particularly with human reviews. So I've already mentioned that the big advantage of AI is it's faster and cheaper. So the ref currently, the assessment phase of the ref is a year, and you can imagine that a computer, if it was cleverly set up, it might condense that down to a day, maybe. So the speed would be a big advantage, and it would be much cheaper because the time of experts is very expensive. Reading and evaluating an academic journal article is time consuming, and yeah, so in terms of cost, the large language models win, and also speed. And another advantage is that the large language models don't get tired, and if they're asked to assess 120 journal articles, like I think some of the ref assessors are, then they won't kind of get bogged down in the middle or towards the end, or try to assess too many in one day and get tired. So every article will get exactly the same attention from the large language model. So there's no fatigue effect for the computers. And another advantage is that the large language models wouldn't have a personal bias. So they wouldn't give a low score to someone they disliked, or someone that they had a personal prejudice against, a sector of society that had a personal prejudice against, or someone that, or a publication that followed a paradigm that they didn't like, or was a competing paradigm to theirs. So they wouldn't, a large language model wouldn't harshly penalize a study for the paradigm it followed. So it might prefer one to another, but it wouldn't be kind of an enemy of one particular paradigm. But on the other hand, the large language models can introduce biases of their own. So all AI systems are suspect of biases. They can either learn human biases, general human biases, and also they can invent their own biases. So large language models are definitely not bias-free systems. So there are things that you have to check for biases. And yeah, new biases that they might introduce would be conservatism. So if they see something that's a bit different, then they might think it's wrong, whereas a human reviewer might think, okay, this is innovative if it's different. So that's a kind of bias that they might introduce. And also in terms of knowledge, so I think the large language models are worse than humans, but they do have some advantages. So the large language models have wider knowledge than a human. So a human reviewer might focus on one aspect of a paper they're assessing. So for me, look at the methods more than anything else, whereas a large language model can look at everything. So it'll have some knowledge of the methods, some knowledge of the literature review. Every aspect of the paper it can have some knowledge and give some attention to, whereas experts tend to be a bit narrower. But on the other hand, the knowledge is shallower of large language models, so they won't have the detailed expertise that will know the value of a new paper to a field, for example, and they won't be able to check methods properly, so they will overlook mistakes in methods other than obvious mistakes that an expert would identify. So it's the large language models will give a shallower review, but broader, shallower but broader. Okay, so that's a kind of general overview of the types of things that we expect from large language models in comparison to human reviewers. And so now I'd like to go on to some experiments with large language models and show how they compare in practice when we try them out. So yeah, so maybe one last thing on the comparison between the large language models and the human reviewers. I think we have to remember when we make the comparison that human reviewers are also very different. You can have a highly expert human reviewer, a careful, expert, experienced human reviewer, and you can have a very poor quality human reviewer. So the large language models, and another of their advantages is they're the same all the time. They never wake up one morning and they're expert, and another morning they're not expert, but they're the same all the time. Whereas when you select a human reviewer, you're a little bit at risk of having a bad set of reviewers or a good set of reviewers. So not equal to everything that's assessed. Okay, so the experiment. So for the experiment, I gave ChatGPT the instructions that the human assessors were given for the ref. So for the human assessors that looked at the journal articles and other outputs in the ref, they were given about a page and a half of instructions about how to assess these outputs, and this slide shows about a third of the instructions. So they're told to assess originality, rigor, and significance, and then give a score: 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, or 4 star, where 4 star equates to broadly world leading, and 1 star is recognised nationally. So these are public. This is public information that all the universities know. You can read this before you submit your work, and this is what the assessors are expected to follow. So I gave the computer the same instructions as the humans, and then I tried to check if it gave the same results as the humans or not. And this is an example of an output from ChatGPT. So I didn't do anything at all clever with ChatGPT. I just gave it what the humans were given, just a slight tweak at the top. In the first line of the instructions, everything else was identical, and then asked it to write a report on an article that I fed in, and it wrote a very plausible looking report. So it discussed originality, significance, rigor, and then it deliberated about whether it should give the article a 4 star score or a 3 star score, and it gave points for both, and then it ended up concluding with a 3 star quality recommendation. So if you looked at this, and if someone had told me this was written by a PhD student or someone junior in the field, then I would believe that. So it looks to me like a well-written, well-structured, plausible evaluation. But the question I want to ask is not whether it looks good. ChatGPT is very good at producing things that look good, but I want to know, is 3 star the correct number, or has it made a mistake? So that's what I'm looking at. So I did a few experiments. So this is the first one, a small scale one, and then a large scale one. So for the small scale one, I picked 51 of my own articles, and then I scored them all from 1 star to 4 star. And I haven't told anyone these scores, and I've not put them on any AI system, so they're completely private scores. And then after I'd finalised what my scores were, I put the articles into ChatGPT and asked it to score them, and then I compared my scores to ChatGPT scores. Okay, so the results were not what I expected, so I'll explain why I'm putting this really weird graph up. So this is the correlation between my scores and ChatGPT scores. That's on the y-axis of this graph. And the weird thing I found out, or the thing that I didn't expect that I found out, is if you do it once, you don't get very good results. You've got to do it multiple times and then take the average score, because ChatGPT quite often changes its score. And each individual score is okay as a prediction, but if you take the average of many scores, at least 5 and up to 30 I've tried, you get a much better prediction. So taking the average prediction from ChatGPT is much better than taking a single prediction. So the correlation increases the more predictions you average. But the correlation is positive. So that means it's not guessing at what the score is. It has, to some extent, a moderate degree of agreement with my score. So we don't give the same scores, but our scores moderately well agree. So that means it's helpful in terms of assessing the quality of research. It has some capability to do it, but it's not perfect, at least compared to what I think the scores are. And another strange thing is that it can do this only with the title and abstract of the paper and not the full text. So so if you put the full text and you put the title and abstract, you get similar correlations. In fact, for this data set, it was slightly better if you put the title and the full text. So it's really guessing what the score is. It's not giving it a reasoned assessment like a human assessor would be expected to, but it makes a guess, and its guesses are pretty good. But the one thing that it doesn't do well is it doesn't guess the specific score well. So it's not very good at guessing the score, and that's because it tends to guess high. So if you ask it for a score on almost every data set I've tried it on, its guesses are generally too high. So you have to ignore the score completely and then rank the scores and look at the percentage. So if it predicts a score of 3-star, that's not very helpful. But if you know that its prediction is in the top 5%, then that is helpful. That's the information that you need. So I'll come back to that a few times. So you have to ignore the exact score, but just look at the rank of the scores within a set of scores. So scores are typically quite close to 3 for most fields. So if you looked at the predicted score, it would be 3 for most fields for virtually all articles in the ref. But if you rank them, then you get the more useful information. Okay, and the best input is the title and abstract. For this data set. For other data sets, it's the full text is slightly better, but overall it doesn't make much difference. And that certainly tells us that it isn't doing a proper assessment. It's just making a clever guess, but it's very clever at making these guesses. And it's useful to know that it works as well with the title and abstract, because there are much fewer copyright concerns with using their title and abstract. So if you're entering the full text into a large language model, then there are more copyright issues that you have to deal with to make sure that you're legally allowed to. So in some circumstances, in some countries you can, others you can't. But title and abstract is more copyright free, not completely, but it's easier to get, easier to do legally. Okay, so after getting these good results, I wondered whether ChatGPT could be fooled and give a high score to an article that every human would know is completely false. So I invented a fake article, and it's about squirrel surgeons. So it's squirrels that do surgery and write up their surgery in research papers. So it's squirrels writing research about squirrels doing surgery. So hopefully every human looking at this will say, this is stupid, squirrels can't do surgery, and score it 0. But ChatGPT gave it 3-star or 4-star, so it didn't ever realize that it was a fake article. So this is a section of the report. So it was impressed that this article looked at variables like author species, so comparing humans with squirrels, and gave a high score. So other the bigger, more powerful versions, the thinking versions, tend to catch out this fake article. So ChatGPT 5, if you try it in that, then it smells a rat, and it realizes that species here can't be a realistic thing, but it still gives it a 2-star despite being fake. And O3 always spots it. Every time I put this article into O3, the biggest, most expensive thinking ChatGPT, it immediately spots it's a fake article, thinks it's a joke article. So there are still concerns with ChatGPT being fairly easy to fool. At least the cheaper version's fairly easy to fool at the moment. Okay, so a second data set. I've got a second data set to test out the results. So for the first data set, small scale test just to see whether it worked. And then with the largest data set, I wanted to see what the differences were between fields, whether it worked the same for all fields and whether it worked for other people's research, not just my own. So I used a Ref 2021 article. So I took all the journal articles from Ref 2021 and I didn't have the exact score for any of these articles because the exact scores aren't published. So what I took for these articles was the departmental average score for the submitting department. So this is kind of a proxy quality measure, but it still works in the sense that if so an ability to predict the quality of a paper should translate into a positive correlation. So statistically it works, even if but the proxy quality rating will have kind of a damping effect on the correlation. Anyway, it allows us to see if ChatGPT does work on all fields. And this is a comparison of ChatGPT 4.0 and 4.0 mini, the cheaper version. And in almost all fields, the correlation, so the Spearman correlation for the ranks between the human quality score and the ChatGPT quality score was positive and usually statistically significant. So here the blue dot is ChatGPT 4.0 and it has a similar correlation to the cheaper version 4.0 mini, but not much difference. And it's better than citation. So I haven't included citation data here, but in the majority of fields, ChatGPT works better than citations. So if you want to pick your articles with either citations or large language models do a slightly better job. Yeah, so classics, AI doesn't like classics at all. And I've tried other large language models as well. So ChatGPT is obviously the best known one, but you can also have smaller ones. And in this graph, it has a tiny one, Gemma 3 1B is tiny, only has 1 billion parameters, small and fast. But most of them, except the smallest one, work reasonably well in terms of getting results that correlate with human judgment. So it's not just ChatGPT, it's also Google's version Gemma, also DeepSeek, and it's also a lot of the models that importantly, you can download and run on your own computer. So if you want to do secret tests where you don't trust ChatGPT to upload your data, you can run it on your own computer with these smaller models. It doesn't work as well as the big models, big cloud-based models, but it does work. Okay, so a few people have asked me in the past, could ChatGPT be cheating on the Ref 2021 dataset by looking up the departmental scores for the articles that are fed into it? And my answer is I don't think it does, because so I ran a test to see if it knew about academic articles. So I fed it in with I fed it article titles and abstracts, and I asked it basic questions about them, like which journal was it published in, when was it published, and what was the first author affiliation. And every question I asked it, it usually got wrong, and often really badly wrong. So the only articles that it did, the articles they did the best on were the highly cited articles. So the top most cited articles of the year, it still mostly got the answers wrong, basic questions, the answers to basic questions about them wrong, but it was less wrong than for the other articles. So so I don't think it's looking up the answers to the ref question. Okay, so other types of academic document, I'm not going to put the graphs up, but there's a similar graph, ref impact case study. So it does a reasonably good job at predicting the quality rating of a ref impact case study. And it actually does a very good job on the environment statements, the ref environment statement. It makes a good prediction, high correlation with the human score for the environment statement. So it has a wide ranging ability to assess academic type documents. Okay, so rolling back, so I'm getting distracted by the funny questions in the chat. So that's great. So rolling back to the positive correlations. So how can we interpret these positive correlations? So I guess the good news is ChatGPT isn't guessing. It's doing better, isn't purely guessing, randomly guessing. It's doing better than randomly guessing. Um, and the bad news is it's not always right. So you can't use it for the correct answer. So it's somewhere between random guessing and being right. And that's a positive, and that translates statistically into a positive correlation. And essentially what that means is it's got an above random chance of being right if you use the rankings you get from it to predict a score. And you can use that if the human experts have got no idea or disagree on what a score should be. And the stronger the correlation, the more likely ChatGPT is to be right about the correlation. So about the score. So I'm sure in your own departments, when you're assessing outputs, you'll come across quite a lot, a substantial proportion where the department really doesn't have much idea what the quality of the research is. The reviewers don't have much idea and the department can't form an opinion. So the department will have to guess. So ChatGPT would be better than a pure department guess in this case. Um, so you couldn't, so you shouldn't, in practice, just to roll back. So in practice, you shouldn't use the single ChatGPT report to predict the score because it will probably be 3-star, whatever you put in. But you can create a system that where you put all the articles in and you rank them, and then you can use the rank. So you don't care that it's predicted 3-star. What you want to know is it in the top 10% or the top 5% or the top 50% of the predictions? And that's the information that you can use to decide whether it should be a higher score or a lower score. So it needs a little bit more work to get useful information from it. So what you would need to do to have a good system, a system that's currently optimal for this job, is you would have to put all your articles into ChatGPT or another large language model, take the average score, put them in 5 times each, and then take the average score and then put them into ranks. And then you have ChatGPT's recommendation for the rank order of the articles. And then you could use that to decide whether borderline articles should go in or not into the next ref, and you could use that to cross-check the human scores, just in case there's an article that 2 human reviewers like from your department, but it isn't actually a good article, or the other way around. So you shouldn't use ChatGPT to override the human decisions, but you could use it to flag up articles where you wanted to have a second opinion. So as a specific example, so here's a completely randomly selected article, which I'm guessing that nobody can understand. And if we have to give this a score without understanding it, then the ChatGPT rank could give us an idea. So if ChatGPT told us this article was in the top 90%, then we might give it a 4-star, otherwise a 1 to 3-star. And without ChatGPT, we would be purely guessing because we don't understand the paper. Okay. So summarizing, how can AI usefully support Ref 2029? Sorry, I've gone back a decade in time. So it can't give individual, reliable quality score estimates for academic research. It's too optimistic and it's too inaccurate. So it's not reliable and it's not accurate. But it can quickly generate sets of scores, which allows you to rank sets of academic documents, so papers, impact case studies, and environment statements. And then the rankings can help departments where they have when they have uncertainty about any particular decision. So papers they're uncertain about, or papers where there's a difference of opinion within the department about the quality they should be assigned. And it's also very good at generating feedback to authors and reviewers. So it is good at the qualitative feedback that it gives. It can be very good. So it's again not as good as a human reviewer, But so personally, I find it useful to put my work sometimes into ChatGPT and ask it for suggestions, and then I take them or leave them, whether I agree or disagree with them. But that can be useful for quick feedback. And then finally, back to the copyright. So don't forget, you do need to check copyright before you upload any publications into a large language model. So you need to make sure that either you have the copyright holder's permission, or the use for which you're doing it doesn't require the copyright holder permission. So that's quite a tricky one to check. Okay, so I've finished there. I'm happy to answer any questions. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much. It was very, very insightful. I have just there were a lot of good comments in the chat as well. Possibly you have. I know it's a little bit difficult, but possibly you have seen as well. I'm not quite sure if you want to have a minute, or I
can
just can recap and add to the conversation in the chat as well. It would be interesting to hear.
So I can jump into a couple maybe. So just the last one I've seen: who's doing and who's reviewing work that no one understands for the ref? And the answer is I'm reviewing work that I don't understand. So the issue is that if you have an academic department, a typical UK academic department, so my guess is most departments in the UK, we have individual academics, a minority, maybe 20%, that do work that no one else in the department understands. So we have kind of quite broad departments, but the department has to review its own research. So I sometimes get papers and I'm told you have to assess this, and I don't understand it because it's not in my specialism. And other people might be given my research that don't understand it because it's not their specialism. So and even in the ref has 1,100 experts. So again, my guess is maybe 20–30% of outputs that go into the ref, they don't have a matching assessor. They don't have someone that can understand them in detail. So they maybe, if they're lucky, they have someone who has a broad understanding of them, but they wouldn't have someone who's a specialist. So that's quite an important point, because it's easy to think of human assessors being like perfect experts, but the reality is that often we get people that are experts but not in what they're assessing, that have to do the assessment for one reason or another.
Just before we switch to Q&A, to the questions Q&A, I'm just wondering, in terms of your research, are you now using the newest models as well? And do you have like what is your overall experience? Because you had several different models for ChatGPT. So I'm just wondering if it's ChatGPT gets worse or better. What's your assessment?
Yeah, I'm expecting it to get better. So I'm just starting a ChatGPT 5 experiment tomorrow probably. So this time next week I'll know if it is better than 4. But I expect it to just get incrementally better. I don't expect big jumps at the moment, but I expect incremental improvements with ChatGPT.
Okay, super, thank you. Mike, let's switch over to Q&A now, since we have a little bit of time. And basically you have to scroll it down.
Okay.
And I think the first questions were to me. So there is a third one from Anish. Are you able to tell us which funder is using AI for reviewing grant proposal?
Oh yeah, it's Lacacia in Portugal, CIAX, I think. So they're a biomedical funder. It's not a UK-based funder. They're a biomedical funder, and they tell the applicants that they're using the AI. So everything is completely transparent with them, and they get permission from the applicants. But other funders are looking at this and looking at Lacacia very carefully, because all funders have massive problems with getting reviewers, I think.
Okay, there's another question from Sylvia. There are more LLMs biases than this, including gender, racial biases. For example, I could not get Gemini to generate an image of a male cooking a stew. Sorry, it's covered here. How this is going to be accounted for? Furthermore, a lot of published data, it's written by men. Amazon Recruiter AI should have already taught us how that can go. So yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good question. Yeah, so also a problem I have when I ask it to generate pictures, I almost always have to tell it not white men. Give me a picture, but not white men. The first one always is. So, but that doesn't seem to apply as directly to academic papers. So the thing that most worries me about assessment of academic papers is papers with a research object which is outside the West. And the AI might have picked up that, for example, US-based research is more valued, more cited, and so it might incorporate this as a bias. So it might have national biases. So it could also have gender biases, but that it wouldn't be told the gender of the author. So it would be for the either the writing style, which I don't think it will have, but it could be for the topic of the research. So it might devalue research that's more done by women. So, for example, one of the most female research areas is a midwifery research. So it might give lower scores to midwifery research than one of the most male areas, which is philosophical logic. So it might give lower scores, but I don't think it will actually. But we definitely need experiments to check whether that happens, whether it does have biases against the aspects of gender or ethnicity or nationality that it is able to deduce from the text that it's given.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just reading as well, chat at the same time. I think there was another question in terms of biases from Andrew. If there are the hidden subtle biases which are not transparent in the reporting.
Yeah, so I haven't given CVs to large language models, but that would certainly be a concern that they could pick up. So the Amazon case that one of the other commenters mentioned is where it picked up gender biases from CVs. Yeah, so we certainly need to test to see whether the gender bias occurs in the outputs, but I think that's more in the topics, more likely to happen in the topics, possibly the writing style, but more likely in the topics.
Yeah. Then we have one question from Stan. Is there a evaluation work published somewhere?
Yeah, so the easiest place to find it would be if you go to archive and then Google my name in archive, then there's lots of publications. So you get the latest ones on archive, ARXIV. If you go there, type and Google my name, luckily unusual name, Thelwall, THELWALL, then you'll get a long list of experimental results with this data, including the latest ones.
Thank you. And then it's another question. This is, do you plan to redo the tests with the latest models?
And yes, I will do I will try the latest models. So definitely. So ChatGPT 5.2 and 5. I'm trying this week to next week. Yeah. So there's another question. Are there concerns about energy use of scaling up this approach? So yeah, this is it's a bit of an issue. So it's something we do need to take into account, the fact that if everyone starts doing this, then that would be a lot of use of the computing system. So there might need to be but what I'm expecting is for one of the citation data providers to start to offer this as a service so that they do it once and we don't have to all do it individually. So that would be efficiency, add efficiency.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Okay, the next question comes from Liane. There are numerous studies outlining how successful in scholarship publishing, I think that we'll click the citations, grant capture and visibility are not as accessible for various groups of researchers. What are your thoughts on LLMs amplifying onto continuing these biases, which it can do even without direct information on gender, ethnicity, etc.? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a tough one. So yeah. So I don't think there will be big biases, except possibly against topics for the by the large language models. But it might even, they might even be worse than the human. They might be worse in human judges than human judges in other ways, in that they wouldn't take the wider information into account so easily. So a human judge might look at might take the wider context into account when making a final decision, whereas the large language model will just look at the whatever it's being told to assess, and not and therefore it might make bad decisions because it doesn't take that context into account. But we need experiments to test that.
Here's another from Sylvia. It's very interesting. If we can demand to be evaluated by humans only.
Yeah, so I think under EU law, you are not allowed to be evaluated by AI only. So you have to have a human making the final decision. The AI can make suggestions, but the human has to make the final decision. I don't know if that applies in the UK, but the principle is for any important decision, you have the right that to have a human make it. So, and I think that funders will implement this in the sense that they will allow you to opt out of assessment by AI. So if the ref starts to use AI assessment, then maybe it will also choose that. So that'll be a big decision. So that'll probably maybe a survey they sent out to the sector to see whether people think that's appropriate or not.
Yeah, I think I have just seen Sylvia's comment. Yeah, that it's actually versus mixed one. It's about a human only evaluator versus mixed one. I think everyone, it's more or less argumented. I mean, how we can make sure, or it's a very interesting question, how we have a better quality human using AI or just human as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the optimal balance now is like a little bit of AI input into the human decision, but the human making the decision. But it depends on how good the humans are and any specific exercise. Yeah. So I see another question: are LLM scores influenced by prestige cues like journal titles rather than the content? So for all the experiments I've done, I've stripped out all the journal information and the author information. So ChatGPT has only been told the title, the abstract, and the text of the article, and it hasn't been told which journal it's published in, or who wrote it, which institution. So so I haven't tried to repeat that, but giving it all the Q information and seeing if it affects the results or not. So that would be interesting to do. How do LLMs deal with highly cited articles that have been retracted? So that's a good question. So I've done a study on that specific question, and the answer is it doesn't know they've been retracted. It treats them as though they've not been retracted. So specifically ChatGPT, if you ask it to assess a retracted article, it will ignore the fact that it's retracted. And if you ask it about research that's published in a retracted article, it'll report the research without telling you that the article is retracted. So they are quite bad with retractions at the moment. Oh, tough question from Andrew. It's one way of thinking about this, that the semantic space of text which rates highly on ref is related to the semantic space of positive ref reports. Yeah, so that's yeah. So that could well be true. If the research uses the right words, it gets a good score. So that could well be true. But on the other hand, one of the studies I've cited found that what large language models, I can't remember which one, really don't like is researchers overselling their research. So that's one of the things that you get penalized for most. So if you try to really exaggerate your findings, then it could well be that you get a lower score. But then, of course, the AI has to be able to detect that it's really an exaggeration. So that's another level of complexity.
Thank you.
Yeah, so a question from Helen Young.
Yeah. Mike, do you want to continue?
Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah.
I just, yeah, rather than me reading it aloud, I think everyone has the Q&A open and can read the question as well.
Okay, yeah, great, thanks. So Helen's asked, will this produce de-skilling in research assessment? And yeah, I think that's an important issue. So it's useful to assess other people's work. So you become a better researcher by assessing other people's work. You become better at submitting grants by assessing other people's grants. It's a good learning curve. So that's certainly a good case for continuing the human input, however good the AI is, at least as a learning stage. So at the moment, so it would be useful if the AI could reduce the amount of human reviewing to a manageable level. So that would be, I guess, the optimal outcome. Whether that occurs or not, I don't know. Okay, looking at the other questions.
Yeah, there's one from George.
Oh yeah.
And I think there's a couple of more. You have to just refresh it as well.
Oh, okay. So was ChatGPT less good at identifying less good articles? So I didn't find that. I found it struggled with distinguishing between 3-star and 4-star more than distinguishing between 1-star and higher star. So it was good at the bigger differences, so 1-star and higher. So it never predicted a 1-star. Never. Nothing predicted a 1-star. And the humans gave, I think, 2% 1-star in the ref. But ChatGPT just completely avoided it altogether. But it did tend to give lower scores to the outputs from departments that got low scores. Yeah, so another question from George. LLMs look at word patterns. That's definitely true. Yeah, so if we don't understand how it's doing the assessment, how can we trust it? So that's a good question. And so the answer I think at the moment is, if there is an answer, is we don't trust it. We treat it with a lot of caution, but we use it where it's useful. So I would trust the human experts more than the AI, but use the AI when in situations when it can be useful. So I use the statistical correlation as kind of a judge of when it can be useful. So if you've got excellent assessors, don't use the AI at all. But if you've got assessors that don't understand some of the work, or are too busy to assess it fully, or for another reason aren't able to give it a fully efficient assessment, then the AI can jump in and be useful. Is there any research from Anna? Is there any research showing that humans can change their judgment when advised by AI? So yes, there is. So for one of the computer science conferences, they've so it's the ICLR conference 2025, I think. They they asked reviewers to submit their review, and then once they'd submitted their review, they gave them the AI review, and then they asked them to read the AI review and then decide whether they wanted to change their own review after reading the AI review. And 20% of the reviewers did change their review after reading the AI review. So most of the time it didn't help the reviewers, but 20% of the time it did help the reviewers. So yeah, so I guess what they don't know is if it made the reviews worse with the changes, but some of the reviewers thought it was helpful. So maybe the more junior reviewers or less experienced reviewers, I don't know. That's just speculation.
Yeah, there is one more question from Sylvia. I think you will have to refresh, Mike.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
Again.
Yeah. Yeah. So so Sylvia's question, I think, essentially could the LLM spot styles? So of all the reports I've read, I don't think it suggests to me that the large language models haven't tried to look for the journal in which an article is published in, or look for who published it, look for indicators of prestige, because first of all, they haven't been told to, so they try to do what they're told most of the time. And yeah, and secondly, in the reports, they've never mentioned it. So they've never mentioned, I've given this a 3-star because it's published in a mediocre journal. I've given this a 4-star because it's a Nature paper. They've not once mentioned the journal, the author, or the institution that published it. So they're not told to use that information. They're not given the information, and they never say that they're using the information. So they still might be subtly using it in some way, some patterns. But yeah, so this would take a very powerful experiment to work out if they're really doing that. I think.
Mike, I will possibly send you questions since we have just one last minute left. I just wonder, just your summary, and we will have a panel discussion, which I'm looking for to hear you and Lizzie's and Helen's opinions. But where are we going with this, and why actually we have to now discuss it? Use of AI in research assessment, and especially in preparation for REF 2029.
Yeah. So I guess the key decision for institutions is, do they want to use it to help put their submissions together? And if they do, then the most important thing would be to advise them, don't just put your work into ChatGPT and believe the score, because that's not the best way to do it. First of all, check copyright, and then secondly, you do it as a system. You've got to get a set of articles that you put in, and then get a ranking, and then that can be useful in your decision making. And for a department that has experts that are competent to assess everything they've got, don't bother with the AI. It's not worth the hassle. But for a department with lots of people doing research that no one can assess, and they've got having a really difficult time deciding which is their good work and which is not the good work, then this is a good possibility, something they should take seriously.
Thank you. Thank you. Just to everyone else, I will send a Mentimeter so you can end up your question before our panel discussion, and I'll try to if I can, I'll try to group them so I can ask the panelists your questions, because then I think it will be from relevance. Mike, thank you. Thank you for a very informative talk today. I think we know more or less what's going on. for now, if we can say so. Everything is changing very quickly. I'm looking forward to seeing you on when was it, on the 22nd, I believe, or on the 26th of February, and everyone joining. I'm going to send invitations soon, and I'm hoping to see you again on the 22nd of February. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending. I wish you good rest of the day, and hopefully it doesn't rain wherever you are, because in London it's raining constantly. Okay, take care, everyone.
Thanks very much, Anna. Thank you.
Bye.